Alright, so I did my handout over Lewis Carroll. He was born in Aylesbury, Cheshire in 1832, and his pen name was actually Lewis Carroll, so he was actually born as Charles Ludwig Dodgson. And in his early years of life, he would entertain himself and his family by doing magic tricks or putting on marionette shows. And he started this at a very young age. And then as he got older, he graduated from Christ Church College in Oxford in 1854. And then after he graduated, he started kind of getting into photography, and his muses were actually children. And one of his books, The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland, or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, is based off of a young girl that he met while he was at college, and her name was Alice Little. And a lot of his philosophies were based off of games. He primarily wrote comic fantasies that were childlike. Then he died in Guildford, Surrey on January 14th in 1898. And so some of the works that he had, which he had a lot, but some of them that were kind of my favorites were the Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Those were my two favorites from him. And then Sylvie and Bruno, and then Sylvie and Bruno concluded. And so some of the other interesting facts about Lewis Carroll is he suffered from a bad stammer, but found himself vocally fluent with children. And the relationships that he created and had with younger people actually had a very big influence on his writing, and it created some of his best works. Henry Kinsley was actually the one who pushed Lewis Carroll to publish Alice in Wonderland, Alice Adventures in Wonderland. And then by the time Carroll died, both of the Alice books blew up. They took off across England first, and then they became popular all over the world. And then another interesting fact was, in some cases, Carroll was accused of child abuse, but they had little to no evidence on that actually being true. And so now I'm going to read to you chapter 1 of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and it's called Down the Rabbit Hole. And this is one of the illustrations. Maybe you can see it. I don't know. There we go. There's the rabbit. Alright. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversation? So she was considering in her own mind, as well as she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it was so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say itself, oh dear, I shall be late." When she thought it over afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it all seemed quite natural. But then the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it, and then hurried on. Alice started to her feet, for it flashed across her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it, and burning with curiosity she ran across the field after it. Unfortunately, she was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. In another moment down, when Alice went Alice after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for some way, and then dipped suddenly down, so suddenly that Alice had not a moment to think about stopping herself before she found herself falling down a very deep well. Either the well was very deep, or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look around her and to wonder what was going to happen next. First she tried to look down and make out what she was coming to, but it was too dark to see anything. Then she looked at the sides of the well, and noticed that they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there she saw maps and pictures hung upon pegs. She took down a jar from one of the shelves as she passed. It was labeled orange marmalade, but to her great disappointment it was empty. She did not like to drop the jar for fear of killing somebody, so managed to put it into one of the cupboards as she fell past it. Well, thought Alice to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. How brave they'll all think me at home. Why, I wouldn't say anything about it, even if I fell off the top of the house, which was very likely true. Down, down, down. Would the fall never come to an end? I wonder how many miles I've fallen by this time, she said aloud. I must be getting closer to the center of the earth. Let me see. That would be 4,000 miles down, I think. For you see, Alice had learnt several things of this sort in her lessons in the schoolroom, and though this was not a very good opportunity for showing off her knowledge, as there was no one to listen to her, still it was good practice to say it over. Yes, that's about the right distance, but then I wonder what latitude or longitude I've got to. Alice had no idea what latitude was or longitude either, but thought they were nice and grand words to say. Presently she began again. I wonder if I shall fall right through the earth. How funny it seemed to come out among the people that walk with their heads downward. The antipathies, and I think she was rather glad there was no one listening at this time, as it didn't sound at all the right word. But I shall have to ask them what the name of the country is, you know. Please, ma'am, is this New Zealand or Australia? And she tried to curtsy as she spoke. Fancy curtsying as you're falling through the air. Do you think you could manage it? And what an ignorant little girl she'll think of me for asking. No, it'll never do to ask. Perhaps I shall see it written up somewhere. Down, down, down. There was nothing else to do, so Alice soon began talking again. Denali missed me very much tonight, I should think. Denia was the cat. I hope they'll remember her saucer of milk at tea time. Denia, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air, I'm afraid, but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse, you know. But do cats eat bats, I wonder? And here Alice began to get rather sleepy, and went on saying to herself in a dreamy sort of way, Do cats eat bats? Do cats eat bats? And sometimes, do bats eat cats? For you see, as she couldn't answer either question, it didn't much matter which way she put it. She felt that she was dozing off, and had just begun to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dinah, and saying to her very earnestly, Now, Dinah, tell me the truth. Did you ever eat a bat? When suddenly, thump, thump, down she came upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves, and the fall was over. So that's where I'm gonna stop, and if you want to read Alice's Adventure in Wonderland, you can see where she fell and what adventures she soon takes on in the book. And so Lewis Carroll was a very great writer for children because he basically had the mind of a child. And so the activity that I thought of for the class to do was put them in groups of 5 and let them pick out a different play for each group and put on their own marionette show. And before we put that on, we can talk about what a marionette is, and that is a string puppet, and then the class kind of gets to grade other people on how they did with their play and their marionette show.